Listen at 610 AM, 102 FM.
I listen, therefore I know.
Online at kvnutalk.com and on the KVNU mobile app.
I listen on the app.
KVNU News Time is 5:05. I'm Bill Walter with this news update brought to you by Whole Tree Care. Utah House District has been located much farther south down in the Lehi area, but thanks to redistricting, what is now District 3 will become District 2 as of 2023. A candidate for that district that takes in the northern part of Cache County is no stranger to local and state politics. Val Potter was a guest on KVNU's For the People program on Monday. He feels his work at the local level has suited him well as he again throws his hat into the ring.
And I think that's where it helps to have legislators that have some experience at the local level. I've had experience as a mayor and as a county councilman, and I think there's a lot of legislators, they come into the position and they sense that they're in a fairly powerful position to make big decisions, and they very quickly realize that they can overstep, in my opinion, their bounds and try to dictate what's going on at the city and the county level.
Potter said he believes there's nothing more important than the government closest to the people, such as the mayor and the city council. When it comes to growth, it is happening, but it's different here than along the Wasatch Front.
We sometimes forget that there's a lot of agriculture in northern Cache County, and sometimes we put our focus on what's happening in North Logan, Hyde Park, and especially Smithfield being the larger of the three.
Sure.
And they make noise and we listen, but you know, the people in Amalga and Benson and Lewiston and other areas there are very important. They have a huge job. They have a lot of land, and decisions made at the Capitol can affect them in a negative way.
Potter said their voice needs to be heard as well. You can learn more about his candidacy at votepotter.com. It's 5:07 at KVNU. Cache Valley weather for tonight. Mostly clear is the forecast, and the overnight low in the mid-30s, and then sunny in the morning, becoming partly cloudy, mid-60s for the high. Partly cloudy Saturday, around 70. It's been to 65. Right now it's 64 at KVNU. KVNU weather brought to you by Roof Rescue. Their experienced roofing team is tried and true and will fix your roof guaranteed. Visit roofrescueusa.com to schedule your free roof inspection. That's roofrescueusa.com. Roof Rescue, providing watertight peace of mind.
Is it too early to bring up yard work?
What?
Okay, but this is different. I'm talking about tree pruning. I know we haven't escaped winter yet, but right now is the best time to prune your trees. And the only thing you have to do is call Whole Tree Care, 760-6587. Right now they're offering an exclusive radio discount, so be sure to ask for it when you call, 760-6587. Get ahead of the spring rush. Get your trees and shrubs trimmed by Whole Tree Care, 760-6587.
KVNU News Time is 5:08. Ignored amid the uproar over a gubernatorial veto of a controversial ban on transgender athletes in girls' high school sports, Governor Cox signed 64 legislative proposals into law late Tuesday afternoon. Among the legislation earning his blessing was Senate Bill 167, the sexual exploitation amendments introduced by Senator Chris Wilson of Logan. That law will now increase penalties for producers and distributors of child pornography, making those crimes a first-degree felony. At a meeting of the Cache Chamber of Commerce on March 15th, Cache County Executive David Zook said that SB 167 would ensure that the producers of child pornography would now face criminal penalties as serious as those assigned to convicted murderers. Zook was part of a team of Cache Valley figures who collaborated to bring about that penalty enhancement after a convicted local pornographer got off with a slap on the wrist sentence in court. despite what he calls an alarming increase in demand for child pornography. Wilson explained that Utah laws had previously considered the production and distribution of such material to be a second-degree felony, an offense no more serious than viewing child pornography. And Republican governors in 2 states this week, as we alluded to earlier, rejected legislation to ban transgender players from girls' sports. The vetoes show there are some remaining fractures among GOP leaders over how to navigate gender's reemergence as a culture war issue. Still, those decisions to buck the party's conservative wing could prove short-lived against a fired-up GOP base. Utah Governor Spencer Cox and Indiana Governor Eric Holcomb vetoed bills passed by state lawmakers that would ban transgender girls from participating in gender-designated youth sports. Their opposition puts them at odds with some of their high-profile counterparts in states such as Iowa, Florida, and South Dakota, where politically ambitious governors have leaned into the debates. KVNU News Time is 5:11. For more details on these and other stories, visit CacheValleyDaily.com.
The latest news 24/7. News Talk KVNU 610 AM and 102.1 FM.
It's time to vote in Best of Northern Utah, and Advanced Heating and Air Conditioning would appreciate your vote again this year. They were named Gold Medal winner in 2021 because of their amazing service, and they look forward to another Gold Medal season. Go to Advanced Heating and Air Conditioning's website or Facebook page for a quick link to vote. Remember, you can vote once per day. Thank you for supporting Advanced Heating and Air Conditioning.
We're not comfortable until you are. Advanced Heating and Air.
Bring back what you've been missing. Bring back Cache Valley Hearing and Audiology.
Cache Valley Hearing and Audiology is Cache Valley's most trusted name in hearing aid technology. Schedule a free consultation with Dr. Paul Daines by calling 753-HEAR or visit cachehearing.com.
Bring back what you've been missing. Bring back Cache Valley Hearing and Audiology.
Connect. It's what we do and where we go. We connect with people at home or at work, online or in person. Everyone needs connecting. At CBTD, we are committed to helping our community connect by providing a service for you, a service that gives some the independence that they otherwise might not have. Our employees are here to connect you with the people and places that matter most through our services and through our values. Learn more at cbtdbus.org.
Polylift Concrete Raising and Piering would like to thank you for supporting their business these last couple of years. And to give back, Polylift has partnered with Larry H. Miller to host a humanitarian drive to help the people in Ukraine. Cash donations can be made at lhm.com, or to donate items to help Ukrainian refugees, visit the donation drop-off center at Polylift's location, 727 West, 1725 North in Logan. 100% of the proceeds will go to the Ukrainian people. Visit poly-lift.com for a list of needed items.
Welcome back to KVNU's For the People. A packed hour here in Hour 2. Professor Colin Flint joining us to talk about the geopolitics of Ukraine and the Russia invasion. He is a political science professor at Utah State University. He'll be joining us later on in the hour. Kicking things off here, though, we've sent out open invitations to all candidates ahead of this Saturday's both a Democratic Party, County Party, and Republican County Party conventions. A lot of these races probably go into primaries, so it's not going to go away anytime soon. You'll have plenty of opportunity to get to meet the candidates, but ahead of the convention, time is short for delegates. So we've reached out to every candidate and said, if you've got time, join us. One of the candidates that got back to us was, actually a good friend of the show. You've heard his name many times and voice here on the show as the former chair of the Cache County Republican Party. He resigned that position in order to mount a run for office for county council in the Northeast District there of the county council. Joining us right now, candidate for council, Chris Booth. And Chris, it's going to take me a while to get used to that title as opposed to your previous title. But as always, appreciate taking some time for us today. And start us off. Tell us how you made this decision. I assume this wasn't an easy decision for you.
Jason, it was not. First of all, let me just tell you thank you for giving me an opportunity to be on the show, and appreciate you reaching out. It was not an easy decision. For the last little over 4 years, since January of 2018, I've been serving as the county party chair. And not that I didn't enjoy, putting in, countless hours and getting other Republicans elected to office. I did. I did enjoy that.
You were very successful at that, we should point out.
Yes, we were. It was a good team effort. We were successful at doing that. Yes, and so
it was. Chris, it was interesting to me because as chair, you oversaw, I think, one of the most unexpected periods of time, and we had some surprise retirements. A couple of them, right. and you, it seemed, were running there at the Cache County Party. You were running elections, special elections, quite a while there. So yeah, you were chair over a pretty busy time.
Yes, it was a very busy time. Absolutely, very busy time. I know during my time we actually a total of 4 special elections. The
Wow.
first one when Kurt Webb retired about 2 months earlier than the end of his term, and then that kicked off that I guess was the kickoff for the rest of the county. Casey Snyder, of course, who sits in that seat now, was in that race, and that kind of started it, and then with Jill Zollinger retirement. With that and everything else. So, it was definitely a very busy time. And,
that's right.
And honestly, it takes a lot of work and effort, a lot of communication, an ability to really work with a lot of people, and to get everything done.
So, is it strange now to shift gears and go from chair of the county party, helping to facilitate campaigns? Now you're running your own campaign. It's just you and your team running for that Northeast County Council spot. Has that been a bit of an adjustment?
It has. I feel like there's this huge, especially leading up to a convention, I feel like there's this huge void, in my life. I feel like I'm supposed to be just running on Monster energy drinks and 4 hours of sleep, prepping for a convention, and Shelley Giddings, who is the new chair of the party, she was the vice chair for the last 3 years. She will do a phenomenal job. She was prepared to hit the ground running, and I'm sure the convention will be a good one. So it is a little different. But in some ways, a lot of it, putting out signs and knocking doors and canvassing and talking to people versus talking to them on behalf of candidates, of our nominees. I'm, talking to them for myself,
Sure. So what are you hearing out there? For most people listening, the county council, it's a bit harder for them to envision how these different county districts are broken down, but it's roughly the northeast portion of the county that you would, if elected, be representing there on the county council. And so, what are you hearing from folks as you're out there campaigning?
So this district represents specifically all of North Logan, Hyde Park, and the southeast corner of Smithfield. and south of the high school and east of the high school, and a little bit just across from the high school there. But yeah, what I'm hearing from a lot of people is, they share a lot of the same concerns that I have and the reasons, for why I'm running. They share a lot of concerns about growth. They're worried about water, worried about our infrastructure, worried about transportation. And depending on who you talk with, a couple nights ago I was in Smithfield for a town hall, and we had, some people there from Smithfield, obviously, and they were voicing some frustrations about some of these, high-rise, I won't call them high-rise, but, the density, high-density, apartment complexes and such. Smithfield right now has got an issue with a little piece up Dry Canyon, that's actually on county property. The county wants the city to annex it. The city doesn't want to annex it. It's a little bit back and forth. So
sure.
I think overall, though, people want someone there who will listen, and who will, go there and be their advocate, be their voice. I'm hoping that, that person's me.
That's and so if that person is you, what do you personally hope to bring to the county council? I know, as chair of the party, as Cache Valley resident, you've had some time to see, some of the issues the county council's been dealing with. Have there been? Sure. Were there votes in the past? I know as chair you couldn't really have an opinion on this or that so much, but were there votes in the past that you would have voted differently on? Are there issues coming in the future that you want to make sure you're there to weigh in on?
Yeah, absolutely. I think as a council, we should be careful with, there's a lot of rezone requests that come before the council.
Oh yeah.
And, almost every meeting. So I've watched, I don't know if I need a medal for this or I need to just go hit my head harder against this tree I'm looking at right now. But, I've watched or attended, and mostly watched because, the nature of my job. But over the last 5 years, I've watched or attended almost every county council meeting. And there's always a rezone request at almost every meeting. I mean, there's a lot of issues, I think our council's done a good job. I'm not going to take anything away from them. I think our council's done a good job. There's council members that, do their homework and, before they vote one way or another, and have some conversation, have some tough conversations, as well. And so, to specifically to answer your question specifically about certain votes one way or another, I know that I would not have. I know that I would not have voted in favor of making making any kind of settlement with anyone, with previous employees who brought any kind of grievance against the county that wasn't warranted. I would have, I'd be real careful with, communication and be more open with our communication. And I think our cities, and we see that, that there's a lack of, sorry, there's somebody riding by on a dirt bike. It's legal. It's got lights on it, so it's street legal, y'all.
Just loud.
But, I think one thing that, really, we need more cohesive communication. We need better communication. We need someone who will dig in, and like I said, our council's done a really good job of digging in and knowing the issues and, figuring them out and voting, the best way they felt they could. So really, I think for myself, I have a background in construction. I grew up, my grandfather was a heavy equipment operator who built highways and roads. This is long before OSHA. I rode right alongside him on bulldozers and backhoes and motor graders And so I naturally gravitated to that, and I became a heavy equipment operator, ran equipment for a lot of years, but worked in and around the construction industry pretty much my entire life, and now I'm in the ag industry. I understand what it takes to put in roads and infrastructure. I myself have run sewer lines and water lines, digging those, and running a shovel, and everything else, and reading plans. And I think we need some of that perspective on the council to help with our planning. I've been able to meet with, the public works director for the county, Matt Phillips, and talk with him about some things. And I've met with some other county officials and some city officials as well. And, talking to them and discussing the needs of their cities. And they really just need someone who will listen and help. And at the end of the day, we're not always going to agree on everything, but we still need to have that open line of communication and at least be able to have the conversation,
Absolutely.
Like right now, garbage collection's a big hot ticket item.
Oh, yeah.
Or a hot button issue, I guess.
Countywide. This is... Chris, it's a pleasure to have you join us, and I know you're going to be campaigning heavy over the next couple of days, headed into convention, and then we'll see what happens from there. But it's a pleasure to have you take some time out of your day for us here. For listeners out there, I hope this gets you excited about being a part of this, getting to know the candidates, showing up for the convention on Saturday, regardless of which major party it is you choose. Both parties having a convention, a lot of choices on the Republican side there at that county convention this Saturday, and Chris Booth, our guest here, will be one of them. Chris, always a pleasure to speak with you, and regardless of what happens in this race, we'll welcome you back soon.
Thanks, Jason. I appreciate it, bud. Have a good day.
You as well. Thank you for the time. And for listeners, if you'd like to get in touch with Chris, I've posted a link on our own Facebook page to his campaign Facebook page, some other documents that are out there, and this convention coming up this Saturday where a lot of these decisions will be made. But this county council race is one to keep an eye on. Some big names there, and as Chris said, a lot on the line as far as future decisions. Zoning's just one of them, but probably the biggest the county will be facing in the future. So plug in, get to know these candidates, and make your voice heard. Thanks again to Chris Booth, our guest. Coming up on the other side, our second guest this hour, Professor Colin Flint, joins us from USU's Political Science Department to talk about the geopolitics of what's happening in Ukraine. We'll be back right after this.
Can you imagine what it would be like if you only had one option to choose from when buying a new car? Or while grocery shopping, you could only choose one cereal? Sounds crazy, doesn't it? Hi, this is Matt Robbins with Quality First Insurance. This may be the problem with your insurance. You're settling for one company's rates with no other options available. Auto Owners Insurance and Quality First will give you options. Quality First Insurance, 752-0101. For more information, go to q1ins.com.
Welcome back to KVNU's For the People. I'm Jason Williams. A lot going on in the headlines around Ukraine, the Russian invasion. We talked yesterday on the show about how refugee programs and nonprofits here in Utah are already being impacted by what news reports say are millions of people exiting the country. But around all of this, of course, is the age-old question of borders and power and geopolitics in general. And we reached out to our friends at the Political Science Department, part of the College of Humanities and Social Sciences at Utah State University, to see if someone wanted to weigh in and give us a bit of context on all this as power shifts and change, as we look to see who allies up with who during this specific conflict. It means, like a chessboard, the pieces are all moving around, and it's pretty complex. So joining us right now to help dig through some of those complexities, we have with us a professor at Utah State University in the Political Science Department, Professor Colin Flint. And Colin, appreciate taking some time for KVNU today. I know this isn't a simple thing to discuss, right? It's not easy to just in a couple of minutes say, well, here's what's going on and here's what's likely to happen, right?
Oh, well, thank you for having me. It's nice to join you all. And yes, it is far from simple, and I would actually caution any listener to take on board any specific or what apparently seems to be a simple explanation. One should always be suspicious of those.
Sure. This is, as this plays out, of course, the headlines are focused on what's happening on the ground in Ukraine, but there are larger questions that stand still. I mentioned, who allies up with who. I know a lot of focus right now is on China. What will China decide to do? Will they pick a side in all of this? NATO, of course, a factor here. And this is what you study, right?
Yeah, I do. I one of my main topics of research really throughout my career has been the rise and fall of great powers, if you want to coin it that way, and especially how perhaps relatively little wars can build into bigger wars as a transition from one power to another.
Sure. This was, in the earliest days of this Russia's invasion of Ukraine, I remember seeing stories on all of the legacy newspaper front pages, will this stop at Ukraine? And echoes of, the beginnings of what led to World War II. We're in a different landscape today, I would guess, but also some things are kind of the same.
Yeah, I do think that. This is a very concerning situation. First of all, before we think about the big picture, I think we have to think about the very human picture of this, the degree of suffering within the Ukraine, which geopolitics is all about people in places and the impact upon them, as well as a bigger global picture. So I'd like to consider that. But as we think about that and try to put this, for me, in some sort of historic comparison, I think there are some similarities with situations that led up to World War I and World War II. There are also some fundamental differences as well. And the biggest difference there, I would say, is the existence of NATO, along with other alliances, such as the Joint Expeditionary Force, which, if you like, is the northern segment of NATO, as well as economic relations, the European Union, as well as close relations across the Atlantic, both military through NATO, as well as economic and cultural ties. And I think those are significant differences from today than in the lead up to World Wars I and II.
Now, this is something you've written and spoken about quite a bit over the years. In fact, some of your areas of specific interest include something. This is fascinating to me, just this phrase, the geography of war and peace. What is that?
Well, so I'm a geographer by training. All three of my degrees are in the discipline of geography, and for many people that can seem a bit of a surprise. It's like I have a PhD in a Jeopardy category, but I'd like to emphasize that geography, the way professors tackle it, is very different from just learning the names of capital states and mountain ranges and the like. If that was the case, I'd have failed a long time ago. Just as all our actions, whether they're political or military or economic, take place in time, there's a history to our activities, there's always a geography to our actions as well. Our actions take place in particular geographic contexts, particular places, particular countries, particular regions, and our very own actions help make geographies, if you like. The invasion of Ukraine is Vladimir Putin's attempt to recreate the geography of the borders between Ukraine and Russia, and to perhaps create one bigger country out of those rather than having Ukraine as an independent country. This is a creation of geography. So our actions take place within different geographic settings, and what we do can very much change the nature of those settings.
Sure. And it does influence, just as in the lead up to World War II. It influences nations like the United States in that when you think of geography, there's this giant ocean separating us, and that allows us to, when convenient, kind of be removed from a lot of this, right?
Yeah, United States is a very interesting country in terms of how it came to be a great power. And if you think about past great powers, before United States, Great Britain, before Great Britain, the Dutch, they all in a way have been sea powers, which I think is interesting. But they've all been unique because they have different cultures, different political systems, as well as different geographic settings. We often think of the United States as a continental country, but another way to think about it is a country that started on the Atlantic seaboard and progressively became on the Caribbean or Gulf of Mexico seaboard and into the Pacific seaboard.
Talking again with Professor Colin Flint of Utah State University's Political Science Department. Colin, bear with us. We have one more break to get to here. For listeners, again, we're talking the headlines of Ukraine with the Russia invasion with Professor Flint from a geopolitical perspective. What does it mean on the global stage? More with our guest, Professor Colin Flint of Utah State University, right after these headlines with KVNU's Bill Walter.
Thank you, Jason. KBNU News Time is 5:36, and the news is brought to you by Northern Steel Buildings. They opened their doors on January 1st, 2020, so they're still fairly new, but For Gold Service and Rescue strives to serve an underserved population in the Brigham City community by providing medical alert and task assistance dogs to the people who need them. On KVNU's For the People program on Tuesday, Executive Director of For Gold, Tamara Forsyth, said what their organization does is they take puppies that have been specially raised, bred for service, and started out on a path of learning.
And our goal is to reduce the washout rate. And so when we get the puppies through their basic obedience training, they are raised with puppy raisers for about 6 to 8 months. And once they've passed their Canine Good Citizen certification, then we award them along with a $2,500 scholarship to start on their advanced service dog training.
They are holding their Service and Rescue 2022 award ceremony this Saturday morning at 11:30 at the Brigham City Fine Arts Center at 58 South, 100 West. She described the inspiration for the name For Gold.
It originated from just Four Paws. We were just trying to be creative in what we could do, and also the fact that most of the dogs that are awarded are golden retrievers, so 4 paws of golden retrievers, and it just came out to 4 gold.
This year's event includes a catered lunch and a silent auction in addition to the award ceremony. If you'd like to attend, please RSVP at forgold.org. A Utah Department of Health report on Thursday lists 37 new COVID deaths, although 33 of those deaths occurred before February 24th of this year. Through 24 months of the pandemic, 4,681 Utahns have lost their lives to COVID-19. That includes 240 in northern Utah. From the time that case counts have decreased in Utah, epidemiologists across the state started a review of past death certificates in an effort to assure that all COVID-19 deaths are included. With 110 deaths reported since Tuesday, 95 of those cases were identified through that review process. Today, UDOH reported 152 new COVID-positive cases since Wednesday. Since the pandemic started in March 2020, there have been 927,165 positive cases in Utah, which includes about 52,000 in Cache, Box Elder, and Rich counties. Since the outbreak began, over 2,000 in the Bear River Health District have been hospitalized. KVNU News Time is 5:39.
The planet Earth
Earth has been rotating around the sun for 4.5 billion years. Since the dawn of man, we have been crafting and refining tools to dig into the Earth's surface.
Oh, me dig. Oh, me tired.
But it wasn't until today that digging could be so much fun.
Me digging this.
Northern Steel Buildings will dig for you. Have them build you a hay barn, shop, warehouse, or if it's time to expand your business with a new facility, they'll move the earth around to make it happen. See their work online at northernsteelbuilding.com.
KBNU weather for tonight. Mostly clear skies is our forecast overnight, mid-30s, and then sunny to partly cloudy, mid-60s tomorrow. Partly cloudy, around 70 on Saturday. It's been to 65, right now at 64 at KBNU. KBNU weather brought to you by Berenson Caldwell. When the bills from your accident pile up, it's time for you to consider professional legal advice. It's time for you to get the bear, Berenson Caldwell. Visit berensonlaw.com. For more details on these and other stories, visit cashvalleydaily.com.
At Heritage Jeep, we're always looking forward to this time of the year. March is finally here, and it's Jeep Celebration Month. If you're like a lot of us, your brackets didn't exactly pan out the way you wanted this year. Don't worry, because we've got great deals on a full starting lineup of new Jeep vehicles all month long at Heritage. Like 0% financing for 72 months on the all-new 2022 Jeep Wagoneer Series 2 and the all-new 2022 Jeep Wagoneer Series 3. And check out the All-Star that always comes through in the clutch. One of the most versatile Jeep vehicles ever, the 2022 Jeep Gladiator. Leased for just $379 a month. We want our guests to have the best Jeep buying experience possible, no matter which model you choose, from the all-new 2022 Grand Wagoneer or the greatest of all time, the legendary Jeep Wrangler. At Heritage, the excitement doesn't end when the nets are cut down. Come on in and see us in Brigham City, Tremont, or Logan. Heritage Jeep, your hometown dealer with the biggest deals.
It's spring in Cache Valley, and that means Baby Animal Days 2022. Once Upon a Farm at the American West Heritage Center, March 31st to April 2nd. Come see some furry tales featuring the exotic animals from Utah's petting zoo gone wild. Then April 6th through 9th, come see more than just the 3 bears with baby bear cubs from Yellowstone Bear World. As always, the cute and cuddly baby farm animals are available throughout the event. There'll also be wagon rides, historic demonstrations, food vendors, and other hands-on activities. Daily tickets are limited, so buy yours online today at awhc.org. Special thanks to sponsors Young Automotive, Zions Bank, and the Cache Valley Visitors Bureau. Baby Animal Days at the American West Heritage Center. Don't miss it.
Welcome back to KVN News for the People. Continuing on with our conversation with Professor Colin Flint of Utah State University, Professor of Geopolitics, contextualizing the headlines out of Ukraine for us, what it means on a global stage. And Professor Flint explaining that just like the U.S. in control of near waters and far waters, there are a lot of moving players here.
And the United States did that, especially during the fighting of World War II. And it's remained there through the establishment of NATO, the military presence that it has in Western Europe, and, of course, its military presence across the Pacific. In bases such as Okinawa, Japan, for example. And the interesting thing about this to remember is that what you could say are United States far waters, such as the Western Pacific, for example, are other countries' near waters, such as China's near waters, and hence you have the potential for friction between countries, because some may see that they have a presence of another country in their own near waters, the waters close to their shoreline, and they may get upset about that. The United States of America, in a way, ushered out Britain from near Atlantic waters in the Caribbean area, and did that peacefully. But it didn't want Britain, and Spain would be another one in those near waters. And you can have to perhaps understand why other countries today are wondering why the United States is in their near waters.
Sure.
because it's quite a ways away from the United States, right?
Exactly. Yeah, yeah, and because it's been such a long time, and because it has created a period of relative global peace, but mainly global peace between the bigger powers rather than within smaller countries. But because it's been there for a long time and has created a sort of peace, there's been no world wars for sure. We come to take it for granted. We don't, in a way, question it. But, of course, other countries, from their own particular perspective, can certainly question it. And that's exactly what China is doing right now.
Sure. This is, and I think, I feel something that we take for granted here in the United States. I know I do. Back to geography a bit on this. When you consider, to most of us, as we read the headlines, places like Belarus, Poland, Ukraine, these are faraway places. For people in the United Kingdom, for example, in Great Britain, this is a trip that could be made by car in about the same time it would take an American to travel from California to New York.
Right.
So still a significant distance, but a lot closer than what we're used to here in the United States. And there's a war going on, right?
Yeah, and I think of older generations. My father is still alive; he's in his mid-80s. I mean, he has memories of a global war that one key arena was Europe, and an Eastern Front in Europe between Germany and the Soviet Union. So he very much remembers those times, as will other people across Europe of that age group. And I think it's bringing back some grave concern for them, as you can probably understand.
Do you feel that this is why there's been at least a perception in the news media of unity among European countries in this Russia invasion of Ukraine?
Yes, and I think that historical memory plays a role, but also the strength of the institutions that were created because of that history. The European Union started off as a trade agreement between France and Germany over coal and steel, and the ideology there, or the idea there, was simply that if those countries traded to each other, they wouldn't go to war with each other for a third time after they had done with World War I and World War II. So from that small acorn grew the big tree of the European Union, which has created all sorts of ties. Perhaps not the degree of common identity that we would perhaps think. Some people think of themselves as European, but mostly people see themselves primarily as a member of a European country first.
Sure.
But yes, that memory has created those institutions, and I think, on the whole, up to now, those institutions have held firm and been quite united.
Sure. Which is,
and I think that Vladimir Putin didn't think that would be the case. I think that's been a surprise to him.
It has been, I think, to all of us, especially considering what's at stake for many of these countries by simply picking a side, which is something that is a bit easier for the United States to do, of course.
Yeah.
Colin, what do you? I know this is a really unfair question as a wrap up here, but what happens next, or what are the possible scenarios next as this is eventually in some way resolved? Hopefully, the geopolitics shift around that resolution.
Yeah.
So, what are the possible end games here?
So I'll give you. So it's of course hard to predict.
Sure.
I think it's hard to predict. I think we have to hold our hands up and say that most of my colleagues didn't predict the invasion. Even up to the day, we didn't think Putin would invade Ukraine, and that's because we couldn't see what the benefit would be. If you think of it in terms of a cost-benefit type of analysis, we just didn't think that the benefits would be there, the outcomes would be there. We should have figured it out when he gave the speech just a few days before the invasion about Russian nationalism and Ukraine as part of the Russian nation. That was a turning point. Some people saw that. In hindsight, it was certainly a turning point. So let me try and figure out. So what's happened, perhaps much to the surprise, is that the invasion has pretty much stalled. There's really high casualties on the Russian side. My fear, the one horrible scenario here is that in the face of that defeat, Putin escalates in a way by increasing bombardment of civilian targets, and I don't think we can rule out the use of a small nuclear weapon. I still don't think that's I think there's a less than a 50% chance of that, but I don't think we can rule it out. That's a horrible thing to say.
Sure.
I think long term, this is a dreadful outcome for Russia. If the military campaign continues, it's a long, grinding war for Russia, and I don't think it seems that his military is really up for that. And there'll be a lot of casualties, and that will feed back into dissent within Russia amongst elites as well as amongst the people. Russia's economy is going to get hit very badly. And we've already seen reports of tens of thousands of people trying to leave Russia, especially young and well-educated people in new industries such as information technology. This is all a bad scenario, and it puts Russia back greatly. I think it strengthens NATO. In a way, NATO's been looking for a purpose since the end of the Cold War, and it's sort of justified its existence through the war on terror. But this has really given it that strength. I think, though, that the longer this goes on, there could be greater cracks in this. Some countries are more reliant on links with Russia than others. That will perhaps lead to greater tensions the longer this goes on. But at the moment, that unity is there. And let's perhaps end where you started, Jason, and that's with China. And what's China got to do with this? China's growth has been partly based on this economic project called the Belt and Road Initiative, this massive infrastructure project for trade investment that essentially spans the globe. And there's been two, essentially, routes for that. One has been across Eurasian continent into Western Europe. The other has been a maritime one through into the Indian Ocean. Now, this war in Ukraine, if you like, is a massive pothole in that land-based piece of infrastructure. What is it? And that's going to affect China. China, that will probably require China, if it lasts a long time, to have to increase its presence in the South China Sea and in the Indian Ocean, which had already, prior to this war, been seen as the most likely cause of another war, would be China's naval growth across the Indian Ocean. There had already been alliances in which the United States was heavily involved to try and counter that to some degree. Can this go even worse here? And the answer is yes, and the answer will be an indirect one through sanctions. If China feels that America is taking the opportunity to turn the screw against China by including sanctions against China, if it continues to trade with Russia, that's where I think things could escalate, and that would be, for me, the more likely step to a bigger war than just the land-based Russia-Ukraine war.
It's frightening to think about, and almost no real good scenario for anyone outside of the positions of power where these decisions are being made, which I guess is how it goes. But
I do have optimism, or my optimism would be this, Jason, is that China was doing quite well by staying within the rules of the game, really, and just working hard on its economic agenda and putting its economic presence across the globe. Now, this ruffled feathers, for sure, but it wasn't an act of war. And my optimism would be that China sees the global reaction against Russia because of its invasion of Ukraine and realizes it has a lot to lose if it doesn't play by the rules, and has much more to gain if it stays within the rules. That's the better scenario for China. But what that, of course, means is that there can still be that relative transition of power between the United States and China if China is able to succeed by playing through the rules. But hey, at least it may not be a global war.
Sure, that's right. Which is definitely something you would think everyone would like to avoid. Well, most everyone. This is a fascinating conversation and really gets into the complexities of all this outside of the headlines that we're all exposed to every day. And for listeners, again, our guest is Professor Colin Flint of Utah State University's Political Science Department. He is a specialist in geopolitics, has written and spoken about this, and you can find a lot of what he's had to say over the years in general outside of this specific invasion of Ukraine by Russia via several links I've posted on our Facebook page. And Colin, before we part ways, you mentioned that for those out there that are interested in getting to learning more about not just this, but geopolitics in general, there is actually something called an Aggies Geopolitical Observatory that I'd never heard of this before, but this sounds fascinating to me.
Well, thank you for giving me a chance to talk about that. It is perhaps my favorite project of my whole career. The essays on Aggies Geopolitical Observatory, or Aggies Go, as we like to call it, are all written by undergraduate students. They take a current issue of the time and they choose to write a very short, we hope accessible essay, which just gives a geographic perspective on that issue of the day, just to hopefully help readers gain a bit more understanding of it. It's not really a more factual understanding, but hopefully some way of helping them think about it, interpret it. So I would be very happy if your listeners would use Google and find the Aggies Geopolitical Observatory.
And you can do exactly that. A simple Google search for Aggies Geopolitical Observatory will take you to the page. I've also linked to it on our own Facebook page if you'd like to find it there and get a really, really in-depth look at the global politics, not just of this Russian invasion of Ukraine, but everything. Fascinating stuff and happening right in our own backyard. Colin, thank you for your time. Our guest again, Professor Colin Flint of Utah State University's Political Science Department. And we'll be back right after this.
Dr. Josh Redd, chiropractic physician, explains how Red River Health and Wellness can help you.
A lot of our patients end up having autoimmune conditions. This is where their immune system, rather than attacking bacteria, a virus, or other bad things, it starts to attack their own tissue. This can cause so many different issues and symptoms throughout the whole body. The biggest thing for us at Red River is to identify what's causing the autoimmune response to flare up. This could be intestinal problems, blood sugar imbalances, cortisol defects, hormonal imbalances, along with something as simple as dietary triggers and environmental triggers. One of the most common causes, too, when you have an autoimmune condition is you'll have inflammation throughout the whole body. Not every patient will have the same imbalances or the same triggers, and so we have to customize a very personalized treatment plan in order for these patients to feel better.
Schedule your appointment today at 855-55-RIVER. Red River Health and Wellness with offices in Logan, South Jordan, Springville, and St. George.
Call Red River today.
Here's Chad Norton, the lawn doctor, with a tip for your lawn.
It's that time of year again. As you look out at your lawn, you will see lots of matted down, dead-looking grass. It's most likely snow mold. Simply take a leaf rake and give it a good raking to fluff up that old grass. By doing this, the sun will bring it out of dormancy quicker.
For more helpful tips for your yard, go to the Lawn Doctor's Cache Valley Facebook page. To schedule lawn services, go to LawnDoctorCacheValley.com or call 753-LAWN.
DD Auto and Salvage is going to pay you $400 for every junk vehicle. Junk cars haven't been worth a guaranteed $400 in over 15 years. DD Auto and Salvage will pick up your junk vehicle for free and pay you $400. If you have scrap metal, appliances, lawnmowers, copper, brass, aluminum cans, stainless steel, you could be sitting on a gold mine. Call DD Auto and Salvage at 787-1204.
That's 787-1204.
See store for details.
Thank you again to our guests this hour. Former Cash Republican Party Chair Chris Booth, now candidate for County Council. And as you just heard, Professor Colin Flint of Utah State University. Find more about the Aggie